Hello, dear students. Today's topic is lifelong learning. I'm going to focus on three issues today. They are the current trends in the field of lifelong learning or education, continuous learning, and continuous education. A fundamental feature of the modern approach to higher professional education is its continuity, the need of continuous professional development, learning throughout life. The lifelong learning concept, which means that education learning should be expanded to cover the entire life of the individual, all skills and all areas of knowledge in order to use all possible means to provide for all citizens of the world the opportunity to develop themselves personally. The current trends in the field of lifelong learning are the following: teaching independent analytical thinking, quick application of the acquired knowledge in practice, communication of education institutions with employers for the purpose of further employment of graduates, teaching and using the modern teaching technologies. Continuous learning is hardly a new idea. The idea of lifelong education is a brainchild of the 20th century, but its origins can be found in ancient philosophers Confucius, Socrates, Aristotle, Solon, Plato, Seneca. Continuous learning has developed as a practice phenomenon and as a pedagogical concept. For the first time conceptually formulated, this idea was presented at the UNESCO conference in 1965 by the famous theorist of lifelong education, Landgren. On the basis of his message, recommendations were developed on this issue. Since the mid-1970s, the idea of lifelong education finds support in almost all countries and becomes the main principle of educational reforms. Finally, in the 19th, in the connection with the new European dynamics, the European Union made lifelong education the central theme of the organization's human resources development policy. In general, it can be argued that the idea of lifelong education originates in the field of professional training. For example, in England, in Mechanics Institute, the trade union and the training association organize courses for workers to enhance their skills and provide access to training resources and social activities. Also, the courses were aimed at improving professional skills and knowledge. The main incentive for learning here was the idea of using the power of education to develop the idea of emancipation. The starting point of modern research on the problem of lifelong education is understanding that a successful transition to an economy and a society based on knowledge must inevitably be accompanied by a process of lifelong learning defined as a comprehensive learning activity carried out on an ongoing basis with the aim to improve knowledge, skills, and professional competence. This definition is adopted within the framework of the European Employment Strategy and indicated in the European Union's Memorandum of Continuing Education as a working definition and a starting point for all subsequent discussions and actions. Various documents have prioritized lifelong learning and create a political framework to support it. The European Union has provided European citizens with specific incentive tools such as the European Passport, European Qualification Framework for the practical implementation of the idea of lifelong learning. Let's make a reservation right now away. The lifelong learning is not about collecting incoherent life stories or pieces of knowledge that accumulate throughout life. Also, in reality, the whole human existence is a constant learning process, leading to the assimilation of certain concepts and the creation of a system of personal, professional, social, at least significant values. Continuing education is an all-encompassing completeness, individualized in time, pace, and focus, giving everyone the right and the opportunity to implement their own program of obtaining and replenishing it throughout their life. Modern society has entered a stage of its development when the supply of education, general and professional, for the absolute majority of people is not enough for the entire period of their working life. This is probably the reason for the reorientation of the goals and content of education from the knowledge to the personal approach, which implies the self-development of a person capable of active creative activity. This, for sure, prompted the public to to understanding the idea of lifelong education. The central idea of lifelong education is the development of a person, as a subject of activity and communication throughout his or her life. This idea, generated and realized by society, becomes a system-forming factor in lifelong education. The functioning of lifelong education is based on the following principles that determine its specificity: the principle of humanism, the principle of democracy, the principle of mobility, the principle of advancing in education, the principle of openness, and the principle of continuity. In the pedagogical terminology of Europe, the division of education and training into three types is widespread: formal, non-formal, informal. Formal education is more often understood as a standardized school and university education culminating in the issuance of a generally recognized diploma and certificate. Non-formal education is more of a public one, sometimes private, not public education. Non-formal education is usually not accompanied by the issuance of a document. It takes place in education institutions or public organizations, clubs, circles, as well as during individual lessons with tutor or training. Informal education is an individual cognitive activity that accompanies a person's daily life and doesn't necessarily have a purposeful character. Often informal education is understood as any spontaneous and systematized form of teaching in individual knowledge, skills, and abilities that he or she spontaneously learns in the process of communicating and surrounding social environment and through individual introduction of cultural values.